So then, of course, the part that we all really want to know is how do we become securely attached? And that's tremendously difficult. They're way easier to say than do. But here are some of the things that I came up with and surmised, and simply from me, right? What can we do here?
Yo guys, Devin here with Little Priest Podcast. Super excited to have you on for this episode. Bad news, I forgot to hit record on the camera potentially, and I didn't get Fareed's angle for this episode. So, as I'm sitting here editing, just beware that if you are watching, you won't get to see Fareed's pretty face in this episode. However, lots of good information in this episode. Fareed really worked hard to get this episode together, write this script. It ended up being like 4 pages long. It was absolutely insane. So if you could do us a favor, leave a good review. Let Fareed feel some of that love, because he certainly didn't feel it for me when I forgot to hit record on his camera angle. So with that being said, enjoy the episode. Lots to learn about attachment styles here, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Gotcha.
What I'm really excited about
is that we're back.
We're back, dude.
I'm so happy to be here.
I love this podcast.
I don't want to let it fall back like that again. I don't know. Missing one episode made me feel bad. And so
well, viewers have Fareed to blame for that.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, buddy. We have lives, guys. You know, like I think a real conversation that, like, obviously we're not going to have in this exact moment, but like a very real conversation is like, hey man, you know, how much capacity as human beings do we really have to be like, these are heavy topics, man. Most of our topics, like I think the dating apps was more of a fun one.
Definitely more fun.
It definitely can be heavy. But like, I don't know how much capacity I have as a human to like not only just do what it takes to make a podcast and edit it and like everything looking super beautiful and everything, and then also like gutting yourself over a topic that's like, wow, this really hits heavy in my life personally. And like, yeah. So anyway.
And today's topic's going to be a little bit like that for me, because I think one of my issues throughout dating and figuring out who I am is a lot of it stems from how you attach yourself to somebody. And so today's topic is attachment styles.
Yeah.
And what do they mean for us? What are they like? We will go through and define them.
I'm pretty excited to hear the research you've done on it, dude, because it sounds like you've really taken a deep dive. And this is probably my favorite type of episodes to do, is when I know you've like really... I know when you've spent like 8 hours on a script, like I know I'm going to learn something. And I know you, the viewers, are going to have a lot to learn too. So like... Definitely stoked to hear what you have to say, man.
There's a lot of good stuff on this, and realistically, we're not going to scratch the surface.
Yeah, I think it would be hard too, man. Like topics like this are like things that people dedicate their lives to.
Yeah.
You know?
And I came to the conclusion that even in my research, I didn't scratch the surface.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, dude, there's like, wait, for your guys' context, the viewers, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. There are 4 pages of script notes, and these aren't like little sticky notes either. These are like full-size Microsoft Word documents that Fareed has typed 4 pages worth of notes.
It's really, really good stuff. And the stuff that you learn along with it is just so, is helpful. Yeah. It really is helpful. Like I think one of the portions of it when they were describing attachment styles was they built a graph, not a graph, but like a diagram of it. A diagram is the best way to put it.
Oh, okay.
That would help you understand, like, if this, then that is how they described it, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
If this occurs, then this occurs, and then this occurs. Yeah. So you created a tree of events, so to speak, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so just to kind of walk into this, because we're just talking about how complex it is, I want to definitely express that, like, this is very much an anthropological field. Yeah. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my blinky eyes.
Your blinky eyes?
I get allergies sometimes. I don't have very many, by the way. I'm allergic to one thing.
He has the nurse friend, and he doesn't think to ask, hey, nurse friend, what should I do for my terribly watery eyes and runny nose and consistent cough? Yeah. I'm kidding, buddy. Go ahead.
But ragweed. the only thing I'm allergic to.
She
That's it.
misses ragweed.
Nobody
like
misses
I
ragweed.
do.
Nobody misses
and
ragweed.
Mama really think... No, it's a song by
I know.
Co Wetzel.
And it's wrong.
Man, it's a bop.
Nobody misses ragweed.
Oh, fucking Co, baby. I love Co.
So if I'm blinky, my eyes are just burning because they're not self-lubricating. That's all. Attachment styles. So there are definitely a variety of theories out there. The one we decided to stick with is legitimately attachment style theory. And that has offshoots into what we will go into more in depth is adult attachment theory.
Okay.
Right? But for some background on it, this is a study that was originally developed by John Bowlby. He had his theories. He was a British psychoanalyst.
Cool.
And he had underlings that worked with him, one by the name of Mary Ainsworth.
Oh, cool.
And she is the one that actually took his original studies that she worked with him on and then extrapolated that into adult attachment theory.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and
checks
so,
out.
and to do this, you might find a couple of statements that are off color. They are taken from their actual reports, and they just sound oddball. I will try to give context for it because they can make some people uncomfortable. And we're just trying to decipher what they mean by these things in their studies. And it's not my place to change that. Just a disclaimer.
Sure.
So there were a few other people included in the dissection of these ideas. This is a theory that has been heavily studied and developed over time by different researchers. So keep that in mind. We are just at the surface of this. So you have a little bit of background who developed it, but the overall theory summarizes and starts with infants.
Oh, that's true. That checks. I remember when, like, from the research and knowledge I have, that it's like all attachment styles come from like infancy.
It's all infants and the relationship with a potential caregiver.
Isn't that crazy? Mm-hmm. Like your attachment style as an adult forms as an infant. Like obviously I didn't know that for a long time, but then once I found that out, I was like, oh my gosh.
I just keep remembering about the egg on my face.
The egg on your face?
Yeah.
What do you?
What
do you mean?
That one time, insert video here, where I was like, your childhood is meaningless.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Basically, it's a relationship that infants build with a caregiver, right?
Right.
And how they interact. So if a baby is crying, screaming, struggling any way it can to bring attention to itself in its process of attaching to an adult or caregiver. And according to them, it's from infancy till reaching, their words, sexual maturity or adulthood, right? Adulthood, when you're trying to find your own partner kind of thing, starting your own life.
No, that makes sense.
That is for clarity's sake.
Well, I was only wondering, I was like, well, wait a minute, because I mean, like, you know, kids reach sexual maturity like pretty quick. It's actually, and I'm not going to quote this, obviously, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure it keeps getting like younger and younger for some reason.
I don't know.
Like it's like a concerningly like young age when like humans are actually capable of being like quote unquote sexually mature or whatever.
You can refer to a lot of things on that. I'll simply say that I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. I'd like to think that at this point we'll stick to commonalities, right? 18 is maturity, become an adult, we'll live with that for this.
Or maybe roughly the area where you would be like seeking out a partner, I guess, right?
Yeah. I don't have the information that they were meaning to describe that. So for my own understanding, I chose 18 or whenever you are seeking out your own future partnership. And we're, in our case, legal.
Yeah, right.
You know, legally, your parents are no longer responsible for
that
you.
kind of. Yeah, that makes more sense.
But
that checks out.
I think what they had originally meant, again, this is just my interpretation, was when that caregiver relationship starts to kind of dwindle. And then the cycle restarts.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Excuse me. So that's what we're going to use for context here. And the reason I do think they used sexual maturity was because this study also went into mammals in general.
Oh, wow.
So it evolved from just human infants to, wait a minute, this is something that is very apparent in other mammals.
This may not be relevant. I'm not sure. And if it's not, I'll just edit it out. But like, what was the one story or the study? Of course, they quit because it was on animals, chimps to be specific. Man, you told me about it. It was like a research study that they did. And it's like the attachment or like the comfort that a chimp wanted
overrode its desire for food at one point. Like for a really long time, like they gave it like this basically like, stuffed chimp mother to like, simulate its mother. And like, and then they gave it food. And like for the first while, it chose food. But then like after that, it started turning down food because it just so badly wanted that connection. And like
there's a lot of studies out there and experiments really that have gone on. A lot of them bordering ethicalness.
Right. Yeah. No, sure.
On what do humans need. And I didn't put this into this discussion, but like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, sort of speak. So definitely a thing. Is it Maslow or Mas?
No, it's Maslow.
Maslow, yeah. Mm-hmm. I always get his name wrong. The hierarchy of needs is definitely very important. But with mammals specifically, which they focused on, like especially as infants, they're defenseless. They have no ability to take care of themselves. For at least human adults, other mammals born a little bit different, but they require that interaction and that caregiver to infant relationship for survival. And this becomes very, very important in how the baby develops.
Sure.
And then that development translates into later the adult attachment theory. So one of the statements I read in there, which was fantastic, this is after the extrapolation from infant to caregiver and moving into adult to adult attachment theory,
right,
is we unconsciously expect our romantic partners to act as our parents did, and therefore we act in certain ways due to these expectations. Now I'll give you context for that. Yeah.
No, like sorry for the pause. I'm just like, dude.
The reason that this adult attachment theory becomes so interesting is because when you enter a relationship, you now have to become, each individual has to become both the caregiver and the infant. And so the way that you deal with those things...
Dude, this is crazy. This is like, wow. I'm like, sorry, I'm like interrupting you. I'm just like, this is such a big, like, you have those aha moments where you're like, holy shit. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to tell my story yet, but just remind me to like kind of give you context on what just happened in my brain, or like the dots I just connected.
Devin's story.
Yeah.
So effectively, you now have to play as the individual both parts, right? And so the way that you were raised are now the standards you set for somebody else, and can set you up for what comes down to one of the 4 or apparently 5 attachment styles.
Yeah.
Right? And so to give that more broad context.
Yeah. Wow.
You could definitely take this in many ways, and I intend to keep this just strictly to caregiver, infant, partner, all this, right? Yeah. Your partner has certain needs to feel secure.
Right, of course.
And you have certain needs to feel secure. And the only way that you can build the most popular attachment style, the secure attachment style, is to be able to soothe those needs for your partner while having your needs soothed at the same time.
It has to be at the same time?
Has to be at the same time.
Okay.
Because if there is an imbalance,
right, then
you start falling into some of the other attachment styles, which now we'll actually clarify on those.
Yeah.
We have the secure attachment.
The ones I envy.
Oh, yeah. No. And they have a beauty to them, especially the securely attached. That's the most beautiful of them all, right?
Sure.
Securely attached adults are comfortable with intimacy, trust their partner, and aren't afraid to be close to others. And what that does is gives you the ability to get your emotional needs met, feel secure that you have someone that watches your back. It's me, I hit the spring.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow, it was like really like going for a while too. Yeah.
Yeah. But allows them, both partners, to still live a fulfilling life full of exploration.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the biggest things they discussed.
Right.
So you have a partner, you know things are always solid, you have your home base, you have stability, which is the most important part.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that stability allows both partners to explore the other facets that life has to offer.
That's pretty cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the big ones. From there, we have anxious. They have different names for it, but like anxious avoidant or anxious preoccupied, right?
Okay.
Which has low self-esteem, a positive view of others, and are typical that's typical of an anxious, preoccupied attachment. They like others, right?
But just not themselves as much?
But they often become dependent on those relationships, and that leads to panic and fear about their partner's behaviors or intentions.
That's fair.
So we will get into this a little bit later, the confusions between codependency and interdependency and how they relate to this. Yeah, because
there is a stark difference. I agree with that. I'm glad you put that in here to define. Yeah.
Because anxious, preoccupied can become a little bit mixed there.
Sure. Plus, like when people don't understand that line between like interdependent and codependent, then you get like some of those avoidant tendencies.
100%.
Where people are like, oh, no dependence and all. And it's like, whoa. Hold on now. Interdependence, okay. So I'm glad. I'm glad you're going to define that later, yeah.
And actually, I will talk about how, depending on where you read, right, these definitions are more advanced version than what the original studies went with.
Oh, okay.
And so there's 4 here. The original had 3. Secure, there was anxious avoidant, and then there was like a dismissive. And here they tend to mix the anxious preoccupied instead of the anxious avoidant. So then we have the dismissive avoidant, which is people with a dismissive avoidant attachment style tend to have a positive self-view, meaning they internalize things. I'm happy here, right? But a negative view of others.
Oh, okay.
So,
a little vice versa.
Yep.
Yeah.
So basically, if they have experienced avoidant childhood attachments, their value in their independence becomes a more important thing because they understand they can control themselves, not what the world brings to them. So that brings safety in knowing that I'm in control. I'm happy here. I don't need all of this over here. And that becomes a very interesting too. So dismissive, avoidant, I don't need that. I'm happy with myself.
Yeah, this is really interesting to have all of these like different like combination kind of, or like these like, attachment styles with adjectives, like dismissive, like blended in with them. Because like for me, like, and obviously I don't have any kind of like professional knowledge of attachment styles. I just have what I've found through my own experiences and through like, some general internet research.
Which is a story too. We can't forget that.
Which is what?
We also have a story here in a bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But yeah, like usually avoidant I just like see as one definition, but this different spin on avoidant being dismissive avoidant is like, whoa, that's different.
Yeah, the interesting thing about it is because if they value their independence, like I said, because they can control that, but they're vulnerable in the sense when they start to get close to somebody and they have to give up some of that independence. They have to put trust in somebody else.
And then it's like, I'm overwhelmed.
They feel overwhelmed, and they feel like if they're not being self-sufficient, then they're not being adequate.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think that maybe gets misconstrued with avoidance sometimes is like, I have some people close to me that I know and that like, I know they're avoidant. I know they do. And like sometimes people think that like they think avoidance means, right, that like that means they don't want intimacy. And like, it's not true. It's not that avoidants don't want intimacy. It's just that it overwhelms them.
For clarity, this whole study is based on the concept that everybody not only wants but needs attachment.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
So none of this is like anyone can be an island, right? If it starts with an infant survival depends on attachment, and if it has the inability to grow attachment, it dies, and so. It needs to, that baby needs to create desire in someone else to care for it.
Right, of course, yeah.
And if it fails at that, it dies.
Yeah.
So, that's where this definitely stems from. And then we have the anxious avoidant. I had to self-diagnose that I am the anxious avoidant.
Yeah?
Yeah, I definitely am. And I understand now some of this here, but it's called a fearful avoidant attachment. It's an attachment style that is usually the result of avoidant attachment or disorganized attachment as children, which again, disorganized attachment was just another variation of this. They use different words. Yeah,
I looked it up, but go ahead.
Yeah. Anxious avoidant attachment often expresses itself as regularly worrying that a partner is withdrawing. Individuals with anxious avoidant attachment styles want closeness with others and then struggle to maintain intimacy because they cannot relax in the relationship.
God,
so
pain.
Individuals with anxious preoccupied attachment style or fearful avoidant attachment style are at greater risk of mental health disorders such as generalized anxiety disorder or depression.
That makes so much sense.
The only way I was able to relate to this, because I didn't relate to that entirely.
Yeah.
For me, it was I have that basic general desire for attachment. And then when the intimacy becomes a little too heavy, a little too strong, I get nervous and I push away.
Yeah.
And that was something that I had to like come to terms with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't think you have to like check every single box of the definitions of these like attachment styles either, because one of the ones I wanted to bring up, and like this isn't necessarily like
the bonus round,
one of the main attachment styles. It's just like one that people have acknowledged can definitely exist for sure, and it's the earned secure. So like that's where I at this point fall at, is that, you know, like I was saying earlier, you don't have to check every single box in one of these attachment styles to be like, oh yeah, I'm probably this kind of attachment styles. For me, I'm the earned secure, whereas like, yeah, I'll just read the definition here so that I don't cause any confusion. This is from fueledschools.org that says, earned secure attachment is the classification for adults who experienced insecure parenting in childhood but have developed secure relationship patterns as adults. But just because I sit here and say, hey, I most closely resonate and like line up with earned secure, like I still have anxious tendencies, no doubt. Sure. And like just because you, the listener might identify with one of these most closely, like I'm most closely anxious, I'm most closely avoidant, I'm most closely secure, doesn't mean you can't have these other tendencies of like being anxious or being, a little insecure or being avoidant at times, just for clarification.
Oh, for sure. I want to be very clear that the goal should be secure attachment.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be what you want to work on. If you have anything other than that, it is a canvas for you to work on becoming secure attachment.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Secure attachment is, just to reiterate that, is that both parties feel secure in the bond and relationship they have.
Yeah,
meaning that they know that no matter what the day throws at them, they don't have to be on top of their partner as another problem.
Yeah.
Right? They're not sitting there going like, well, they didn't tell me they love me enough today. And so what's going on there?
Yep.
Is that they know they get home or they can reconnect.
Yep.
And then they can confide in each other, and there is security and stability. They can maintain that caregiver-infant relationship with each other in a healthy manner.
Yeah.
Now, tell me your story, please.
Oh, we got to dial back. We got to go back a little bit. It was the part where you said that we unconsciously or subconsciously expect our romantic partners to act as our parents did, and therefore we act in certain ways due to these expectations. And I remember vividly all of the years where I was like just wildly anxious and insecure attachment. And like, I was like, dude, that makes so much sense when you said that, because, like growing up for me, my parents didn't provide any of that reassurance. They were kind of inconsistent. And like, I did have to learn how to like dissect and without actual words figure out what was really going on in their heads and like what they were really feeling and what emotions they were really experiencing, because like words weren't there, and I had to use context clues to try to decipher and figure out, in which obviously that wasn't always right. So it causes all of this anxiety and like all of these insecure tendencies where it's like, so yeah, back there where I had my aha moment and was like, holy shit, man. Because I've done that in a lot of my relationships too. Like I said, thankfully at this point, I've more gravitated towards this earned secure with still anxious tendencies. But I was like, dang, that makes so much sense, man.
So I have my own like little twist on this, and I've been trying to work through it, and I might work through it out loud here. My childhood was very secure.
Yeah,
It was tremendously secure. My childhood had two parents that loved each other very much. Yes, they argued. They had their problems, but at no point did we feel like that was taken out on us. Right?
Okay, yeah. So the child-caregiver
relationship was very, very strong. Whether I saw that with them at all times in the way they discussed things, maybe not, but I didn't feel like it affected us directly. I would care to extrapolate without any evidence aside from my own.
Yeah.
Right? That caregiver relationship as we grow is expanded to further, more than just your parents, right? It expands to the people maybe at your school because they become your caregiver now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Right? Your teachers, faculty, staff, all that kind of stuff. The people that are, entitled or, entrusted with your protection.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think for me, I never felt like I had that protection or safety because I was heavily bullied at school.
Yeah,
and it was always so kind of hidden away that it wasn't noticed, so no one was really there to help me, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so I wondered if like that's where my trauma came from.
That caused you to have that like anxious avoidant.
Yeah, because I know I definitely developed it, but it definitely wasn't from home.
Yeah. Okay. That makes. I mean, sure.
It's
right.
It's
like
the
that's
only
not impossible.
theory I have. Yeah, because I don't see where else it would have happened. Like I've never had a bad partner that like I haven't had a potential partner that wasn't very nice to me, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a very interesting theory that I've been trying to develop and figure out where my root is. Because as you know, on this podcast, we love finding the root of problems.
No, sure. Yeah. And it's like so crazy that sometimes that really happens as we're like filming the episode. It's like, holy crap, man. Like, even like I said, the story I just told and that aha moment I just had of like, oh, shit. You know?
Oh, absolutely. And so I wanted to bring up another topic here that can be somewhat related, but definitely confounded with this, and they should not completely mix.
Okay.
It's we have attachment styles, the codependency versus interdependency.
Right. I'm really glad we're clarifying on this. This is very important for people to understand the difference. Yeah.
So codependency is going to be an unhealthy reliance on others for emotional well-being. While interdependency is a balanced relationship where people rely on each other while maintaining their autonomy. So interdependency is a fantastic example of secure attachment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we always strive for, and I always say, I want an interdependent relationship.
Yeah.
Codependency is going to much more relate to any of the other attachment styles. Because it envelops those. It requires the other person in the equation to do something to make you react.
Yeah, so a good example of this, of being like that unhealthy codependency, just to kind of clarify it further, is like your mood depending on your partner's mood, right? Like instead of being able to be in that secure attachment and like be outside of the scenario where your partner's upset, like you are made anxious or you are made to be an emotional wreck when your partner's upset about something, either at you or sometimes I've even been there. Like I have a partner that's upset and I'm like, shit, what did I do? And it's like, dude, nothing. Like you didn't do anything, you know, but still yet I had that codependency where it was my emotion very closely tracked theirs, even if it wasn't anything to do with me.
And true. Now that we've distinguished those two, right? I want to bring in some really interesting examples that would compare an adult attachment theory to just attachment theory with infants.
Okay.
And it was very interesting. Man, that one actually got really interesting where it got there. So like while they were studying the babies, they would look at their behavior when you had like one of the three attachment styles. A secure baby, for example, was plenty happy, like looking at their caregiver, feeling reassured, and continuing their stuff.
Right, like a baby that can like sit on the blanket, play with toys, look and be like, oh, okay, there's mom and dad. I'm going to keep doing my thing.
It's more than that. It's more like, hi, mom and dad. Not, oh, they're still there. It's, hey, mom and dad.
Oh, okay.
I know you're there. It's just nice to look at you. Right?
Okay.
And they could fulfill their curiosities and explore stuff.
Yeah, that makes
very
sense.
explorative, right? Whereas you had some of the more like the babies that struggle with attachment, you would notice them kind of constantly looking around and just panicking and like ensuring they could find their caregiver.
I mean, that makes sense. Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Wow, that's so interesting.
Yes, and so then you'd have this baby that wasn't focused on learning; it was focused on maintaining its security.
Yeah.
Right? Or then you'd have the babies that, of course, it would be very much aloof, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not really looking for the caregiver, though requiring them, but focus on just their thing and might be a little bit more grumpy, a little more cryy, things of that nature.
Wow.
And then they compared things that adult attachments do the same as infant attachments do, and there is overlap. So some of them were that both feel safe when the other is nearby and responsive.
Yeah, checks out.
Right?
Makes sense. Yeah, sure.
Both engage in close, intimate bodily contact. Right? Both feel insecure when the other is inaccessible. And that doesn't mean just secure, like it's just a thing. It could be one of the attachment styles. Both share discoveries with one another. Right? Babies want to show, like, look what I found.
Yeah, sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Both play with one another's facial features and exhibit a mutual fascination and preoccupation with one another. How often do you look at a partner you're really close with and you're like,
right.
Smile.
I mean, I'll be honest, to me, I do that a lot.
It's a thing. Or you just look at their face like, wow.
Yeah.
He's so pretty.
Yeah.
Why are you so pretty? You know, both engage in baby talk. I'm going to go ahead and go for myself on that one.
What do you mean?
It was an issue I used to have in my prior relationship where I used to be like, I can't stand your baby talk.
Oh, you said that to them?
Mm-hmm. Oh, anxious, avoidant.
No doubt.
Yeah, and it's a thing that just happens to be. There are parallels that you see between them. And these were the studies that Hazan and Shaver, more researchers, that were finding between this.
That's crazy, man. Holy cow.
Yeah. It gets very
It's
fun.
so cool. This is why I was telling you guys, the listeners, that like, dude, when Fareed goes on the deep dives, boy, you better strap in, because that means that I'm going to find out some crazy stuff. You guys are going to find out some crazy stuff. And it's like, I know when you spend some time on a script, it's about to get wild.
I'm telling you, I just scratched the surface.
Well, like I said, yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, there's people who dedicate their lives to this kind of research. It's like, us two goobers are only going to do so much.
So I wanted to keep some of that stuff for context.
Yeah, sure.
But I also wanted to keep this productive for the viewers, right? And the biggest thing was, so you understand that you have these attachment styles. You understand that they are in you and they're in everybody else. You understand that in a relationship now, you have to play both caregiver and infant.
That's the part I wasn't expecting. That's like the crazy perspective that I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it has to be this way because
it makes sense.
You're soothing each other's needs, right? Mm-hmm. And so then the question really became, and this is where stuff got really hard because I didn't just get to base it off the studies. I mean, they definitely helped, but you have to find some of the stuff that works for you, but can also be generally accepted, right? And it's how do we identify what style we are or someone else is?
I can't wait for this.
It's so simple and so frustrating.
Really?
And it comes back.
It usually is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like all these things, like we even have a short form video somewhere out on TikTok or wherever.
It comes down to always the same things.
Yeah.
It's finding the root of a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Acknowledgement.
Yeah.
And then more importantly, it is listening. So listen closely to what you are saying, to your behaviors, and to the things that your potential partners are saying.
Yeah.
You can often pick up signals and points to whether either you or your date, are they going to be a secure kind of attachment? Are they going to be avoidant, anxious?
Yeah.
It just comes from their words. And
I mean, sure.
You know, you can tell what kind of person craves intimacy. And I was telling you this actually.
Okay.
Which this might get a little deep here.
That's fine.
So sorry for the women that watch this, but like women that I've interacted with recently that watch this, but like we have done a lot of work on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to hurt people's feelings here, but the biggest thing that you and I have noticed that it's very difficult sometimes to make new connections because I've seen so many issues I've had, and I've had to like painfully deal with.
Oh yeah.
That I can now identify a person that hasn't done the work, and I'm not saying, and after reading all this, I'm not saying I can predict what attachment style they are. And it would be naive of me to even indicate that, like, oh, you got a little bit of this. Like, no, that's not my place. I'm not that well read. But I can identify there is an imbalance in their feelings. And I think one of the things I told you was like, hey, some of these people that I potentially go on dates with, like, they throw up these red flags, but I want to go out with them still to like actually get to see, is this a defense mechanism from some kind of attachment style they're trying to protect themselves, or is this going to be just who their personality is and there is no room for me there anyways, right?
I mean, I would say the first is more likely than the latter for sure. I think people are always,
I'm glad you say that because in my own anecdotal experience, right, almost every single one starts off with some kind of like push you away, filter you out.
Sure. And
the moment you can have some kind of real connection with a person and bring security and kind of, I'm going to make you feel secure. Everything is safe. You can just talk to me. Yeah. You get to meet the real person and you start to understand why they were pushing you away. I'm trying to avoid using attachment style words because I am not educated enough to use them.
Sure.
Right? But you're starting to realize, like, why did they push you away? And what can you do to maybe quell those fears and really decide, are we compatible?
Yeah.
You know? And so that's been a really interesting one that I've struggled with, and like just dealing with that kind of potential mentality. Right? Because am I playing therapist or am I playing the dating game?
Yeah, that's fair. I've experienced that struggle myself too. But I think realistically, man, like it's like, I don't know. People can definitely change. And it's like the process of me becoming like wildly anxious and insecure to like earn secure with still anxious tendencies, sure. But like, yeah, the only unfortunate part to that is that sometimes that takes people time, man. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to undo the damage, to undo the trauma, to undo just the general wiring of your nervous system, man. Like there are physical changes at times like that you can observe in people of like
all up here.
Yeah.
I'll give you a little example for context because I want to make it very clear and easy for the listeners or viewers to like have an example of what I've dealt with. Maybe start putting your own pattern recognition into your own examples, right? You know, when I have a potential partner, date, whatever, that'll sit there and set up all these disqualifiers right out the gate. Right? They're sitting there saying, well, you know, my potential person needs to be able to do X, Y, and Z and do this and this because I am this kind of a person. Yeah. Right?
Which largely I'll even credit that to like some of yours and Aaron's argument of the last episode. And if you guys haven't seen that, real good one.
Check it out right here.
Real good one. The dating apps is like
put it right here.
Some of that I feel like potentially comes from that dynamic.
Yeah, burnout. You know, people having been mistreated by somebody else, and so their recovery or their defense mechanism, right, which becomes part of that attachment style, becomes, well, then I'm gonna make sure I grill you first. Before you have any attempt at getting to my vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Right? And so for me, it's oftentimes just trying to listen, hence the listening part, right? And figure out what are the objections, what are they objecting to, right? And they usually come up as what we call red flags.
Oh, right? Yeah.
They come up as red flags. That's what we do. Like, oh.
The old flag of red color.
Yeah. Have you seen my bouquet of red flags?
Right. Have you seen my bouquet?
Right. Like, I'll give an example. Like, maybe a woman that demands a man with a high income to take care of them, right?
Right.
Is this someone that is spoiled? Or is this somebody that's simply saying, I've been mistreated in the past, and so I'm going to demand something much more ridiculous or higher, or maybe potentially arbitrary, right?
Maybe.
Because if I can't get that emotional connection, I'll at least be physically protected, financially stable,
that makes sense.
Building some kind of stability, right? And so the thing that I found very interesting is, you know, if you're able to connect with that person and actually start to soothe the real concerns, not just like, oh, I want this because I demand it kind of a thing. You start to see the humanity in the situation.
Yeah.
And you start to understand that, like, you know what? This is just a person that has been hurt, harmed, you know, once bitten, twice shy sort of a situation. And then you can really connect with them. But that also helps you identify, like, are these red flags that you just don't want to deal with or don't have the capacity to deal with?
Yeah. Well, right? That's the real question, right? Is because, like, people might have, you know, and I almost hate the term, you know, like, red flags. Because, like, people are just people, man. Like, we don't need to go out there casting shade on people who have just, like you said, have been hurt in the past and have maybe adopted some, like, arguably not super healthy coping mechanisms because of those experiences. But, like, do we really need to be going out here labeling people and saying, like, red flag, when it's like, realistically, it just comes down to, do you have the capacity to resolve these issues, like, or just work past them or just accept them, right? Like, there's some stuff that, like, hey, man, you know, nobody's going to their grave perfect. They're just not.
I've seen, like, beautiful examples of people that would start off with red flags, right? And this is not any particular person. I'm just taking as a general statement here.
Yeah.
You know, in my interactions I've had that, you know, I'll meet these people that maybe smoke every night or they drink every night, and they always have their justification for it, and that's fine.
Oh yeah.
And I've noticed that as whether they're dating me or someone else, as that security starts to build, those things tend to drop off.
Oh, absolutely. As I developed, like, even in my lonesome, into a more secure attachment style, just in general with myself, even, like, I got sober, man.
Yep. It's just really interesting to watch, right? Because the general idea of any mammal or human, right?
Yeah.
Is that we need connection, desperately need it. It is a survival thing. We've had experiments where, like the chimp, for example, right? Yeah. Depression can lead to death.
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm not talking like self-imposed,
Although sometimes.
Yeah, but I'm talking more of if you're not emotionally in a good state, your mental state starts to drop and then organs start to fail.
Wow.
Like things happen, right?
No,
the brain connects, it controls things. And that's why the chimp experiment was such a deep and sad situation.
Literally, it stopped choosing food. For the sake of like please warmth. Yeah.
Right? So that's one way of identifying something. And you really, really, really need to take this seriously is what I took as a draw from all this.
Yeah.
Is that you need to figure out what attachment style you are.
Yeah. I think, self-awareness.
That self-awareness is so important.
Yeah, so important.
Figure it out. And if you think you have it figured out, try again. Because you have to have context. So, and don't try to diagnose other people. Because it's very difficult. Right? And more or less just start to recognize, like, maybe there are certain issues, red flags, stuff like that. Is it something I can indulge in and feel comfortable in and work with? That's more important than being like, you're an anxious avoidant. So, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Focus on the communication aspect of things. Eyeball itchy.
Yeah.
Why are my eyes itching? And that was a really big takeaway for me.
Yeah.
Right? Don't play therapist. But instead indulge in clean, open, honest communication.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely, man.
So then, of course, the part that we all really want to know is how do we become securely attached? And that's tremendously difficult. They're way easier to say than do. But here are some of the things that I came up with and surmised and simply from me, right? What can we do here? And they were back to the basic simple rules. The first step is acknowledgement and recognizing that there is maybe something other than secure attachment in your life, on your end, right? We struggle with that. We're going to struggle with a potential partner.
Yep.
And then you start to wonder, well, maybe I'm dating someone already. Maybe I have a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever.
Sure.
Start looking at your triggers.
Oh, absolutely. And where do they come from? I think for me, the biggest thing was like in assessing where my triggers come from and why is like, where do I get my validation? What makes me feel confident? Like what makes me feel like me and feel like I don't need to compete with myself, with others, with whatever the case may be, that causes and like leads up to these triggers.
For sure. And in this day and age, those triggers get very easy to quash, so to speak, in unhealthy manners.
What do you mean?
Right? Like, I'm feeling insecure with my partner. I'm going to post a photo of me on Instagram doing something awesome. Like. Right?
Sure.
You're getting some kind of validation. And that's just one example. We could do a totally different podcast on what forms of things you do to, like, deal with these triggers.
Yeah.
But the important part here is identify that you have a trigger. What is the trigger? What does that trigger stem from?
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
For sure.
What are the things that make you feel unsafe or feeling that you need to push away a partner or pull them back in harder when something happens, right? Do you feel like if your husband, wife doesn't text you all day, are they upset with me?
Yeah.
Did I do something wrong?
Yeah, doing something they shouldn't be doing, something like that.
Are they screwing on me? Screwing off on me? What is it? Screwing around on me. There we go.
Sure.
And you sort of, why do I feel that way?
Yeah.
Ask that question. Did your partner do something to merit that reaction?
Yeah.
Or here's a better one, right? Did your previous partner do something to make you merit that feeling?
Right. Or like just take an analysis. Like that's the biggest thing I had to do, man. Like to become that earn secure is like I had to take a deep dive of like some of my earliest relationships. Like obviously my parents, that's been like the focus of this, the child caregiver. But like romantic relationships too, man. I had to take that deep dive and be like, really, why am I this way? What has really happened? Let's just go back and kind of recap here. And I was like, oh shit.
Sure.
Like, that makes more sense now. It gets
real deep in there. And this actually goes deeper for your solution, right?
Oh, sure.
So then you've identified some of these triggers. And then you're next tasked with, what can I do to soothe these thoughts or concerns? What can I do? Can I have a conversation with my partner?
Sure.
Maybe you don't have a partner. Maybe you just know that you're an attachment style that isn't right for you. What are the things that you can do for the future relationship you have to know that, like, I'm not doing this? I had a person come into my store today that, like, broke my heart and just what they said. They referred to their partner. Yeah, she's crazy.
Oh, right? That's not good.
She's crazy, but, like, things are going well. I just had to get used to all new things, like the fact she goes through my phone every night while I sleep.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was like, you need to work on that. That's not a healthy thing. She goes, yeah, I've recognized it's not healthy, but it's happening. It's like, well, that's something that needs to be addressed.
Sure.
Right? And you got to figure out why, where did this come from? Itchy eyeball. It came from ragweed. I know that. I took Claritin. So, and then I went deeper, right? So maybe you had an incident in a prior relationship.
Yeah.
That, let's say, you were dating for a year and they drop off. They just ghost you.
Wow.
That can be traumatic.
Sure.
Right? And then a lot of times the natural reaction is, well, what did I do wrong?
Yeah.
And for me, what helped me is to acknowledge that people are people and that they're going through their own things, just like Devin over here said, right? And you have to acknowledge that you're not in their heads. Things happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think another thing you have to recognize, man, is that, like, okay, so say somebody, comes against you in some way or does something that's, like, blatantly malicious, or it at least appears that way. Like, it appears malicious, right? Like, the thing that's helped me get through all of that, and the thing that's helped me see that in a more, like, just like open-minded view, and one that takes, like, less account on me as a person and more on them, is that, like, the way people treat you is more of a reflection on how they feel about themselves than like you as a person. Like, if somebody just, like, obviously does something absolutely heinous to you, a lot less about you, and a lot more about how they feel about themselves and see themselves,
100%.
So that's one that's helped me a lot.
I just like to bring in both sides of it, because my core will always be that you are responsible for everything you do.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And I have a tagline that, is the moment you take responsibility for you and yourself, right?
Sure.
All of your failures are your fault. Everything bad that happens to you is your fault. But when anything good happens to you, it's also your fault. And I know it's a very controversial way of saying, like, well, why did that bad thing happen to me? You made a decision at some point that put you in a position to get that thing to happen. It's just, it's like the reality of life, even though it's an ugly reality, right? And you can
I was going to say, I think you'll have a hard time getting that past everybody listening, but...
Well, and this is just what worked for me. It was an acknowledgement that whatever happens to me, right? I made 1,000 micro decisions that got me to the place where that could happen. But that also means I made 1,000 micro decisions that could bring me to success. So I'm responsible for all of it. And I know where this is going to go. Be very offensive for some people. For me, I'm saying I had to accept that. Whether that's for you, I'm not telling you to live by it. It works for me.
Yeah.
And that is what it is. Kind of thing,
right? I mean, we can't sit here and invalidate you for what worked for you.
Not here to invalidate you, but it brought control back into my life and helped me understand that I can make things better. Right, and then that helps me figure out what happens with my attachment styles. But I had to take full responsibility for everything.
Yeah,
and it's just a frustrating thing for a lot of people to, like, deal with head on, kind of a thing.
Yeah, sure. Because like you said, like, off the top of your head, I guarantee you can think of some situations where they're gonna be like, "Bullshit, that's my fault," because, like, really it is.
Yep.
Like, there are some things that people are like, "No, dude, like, they did not."
It's the whole, like, I won't even dive into
it. I was gonna say,
I'm not gonna do it.
Don't dig your hole, sir.
I don't want to dig it. I'm so tired of digging.
Yeah.
Because these things can be controversial.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Anytime that the role of accountability comes in, becomes just very difficult. But it's required for success in this life. Is 100% accountability. So from there, we acknowledge that maybe our partners hurt us, ex-partner hurt us, somebody hurt us. Acknowledge that, I brought them into my life.
Yeah.
It was a thing I did, and they had their own things they were dealing with. How much can you really hold on to that? Forgive, move on if you can. Right. And then go on to identify your triggers. And then when they start to happen, catch them.
Yeah.
And then remind yourself the things you need to do to soothe yourself. And then remind yourself that while you're in that triggering situation with a different person, so to speak, right? Maybe it's time to push a little harder through that trigger.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
And see if you can push yourself to the other side and see if there's a different result.
Just to gain some perspective, right? Like, it's like the concept of like assuming every partner is going to cheat on you. And it's like, dude, you need to push past that a little bit and like give this relationship enough time. And like also, I think another thing I struggled with, and hopefully this will help somebody out there, is like intrusive thoughts, right? Like a lot of the times these insecurities or like these things that we experience, especially as like anxiously attached people, is that like it's almost like none of it's really grounded in reality. It's all grounded in like our anxious thoughts or like our intrusive thoughts. And like I think the biggest thing I had to learn how to do is just like challenge the validity of those and be like, hey, is this person giving me any indication or reason at all? Genuine, not like, do I think, not am I trying to like decipher and figure out what emotion this person is trying to feel, like I had to do with my parents as a kid. Like, is there real tangible evidence of what I am feeling right now? And most times the answer is no. The answer is no.
I think you're right on that one. And we've covered a lot of things on this one.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, I can only like kind of relate to like how did I become insecure and how did I like spiral as an anxious attachment. Like, hopefully people have gotten a lot from this, or hopefully people have learned something, because I feel like, at least on my knowledge, you dumped all the knowledge.
And I'm telling you,
were like,
that was minimal.
No, I know.
Absolutely minimal.
I know.
And I think that the issue I've been dealing with lately is we jump into the anxious avoidant.
Yeah.
Right? And then the things that they do, right? I've become both sides of that equation at one point, where you have the anxious preoccupied, anxious avoidant and the anxious preoccupied.
Yeah.
Being that at times I've had really low self-esteem and I see everyone as good.
Yeah.
And I'm the problem. And then I've seen it as, lately I've been really struggling with this one, and I've started to open up about it, that due to some things in prior relationships, a prior relationship, I now see myself more as the safety and
the provider of safety for others, you mean?
No, provider of safety for myself.
Oh, okay.
And you're right in some ways, right? Because I know I can provide safety, and I get actually wildly uncomfortable when I go, maybe I can't. And so I no longer want to promise things. Like we had a discussion about this earlier, about the predicament I'm in, right? That's me saying I can no longer provide the safety that the illusion is thereof.
Yeah.
Something's going to hurt for someone. And that makes me wildly uncomfortable, because now I am the producer of discomfort, of pain, right? And then when I do decide to get close to somebody, the next fear comes in is, will the thing that happened last time happen again?
Yeah.
Will I be able to have trust, and then suddenly gone, right out of nowhere? Dang. And that's a tough one.
Yeah.
But I'm also realizing that, especially writing this podcast, it was awesome to start to recognize it, learn those triggers, and realize the biggest thing I can do in my particular case is blank slate these people, recognize some issues, right? There's a reason why we try to find red flags, but give people an opportunity to surprise you.
Yeah, for sure, man. Gosh, no doubt. I like that, man. I think it's a good place to.
That's a great ending.
Kind of sign off on that, man. This is really good. And I think, you, the viewers, I think I would just encourage more, because like we've been getting more interaction of you guys giving us some feedback, or either mostly commenting on YouTube. Actually, people have been commenting more, but we value that from you guys, because we sit here at this table and
thanks for your comments.
Yeah, but we both sit here at this table and very, very humbly recognize that we don't have all of the answers, right? Like there are some perspectives, or there's just some knowledge that maybe we don't have. So if you're on YouTube watching, cool. Like, leave a comment below. If you're on Spotify, there's actually a box underneath the episode where you can like say, hey, what did you think about this episode? Tell us there, because I think there's still like, we covered the primary attachment styles, which like in research are going to be the attachment styles that are used. But then you have some of these little like nuances, like I shared of earned secure. Like that wasn't in the research articles, but that very real. It's very real and definitely exists, you know.
Devin even looked at me and goes, are you upset by this topic I brought up that was not in your research?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like
I have
true.
no way of
like,
validating this.
That 100% exists, right? Yeah. Like through my own experience, and apparently, you know, it can be defined.
Yes.
So, yeah, fill us in, guys. Let us know. We're super glad you were here. You know, also leave us a rating. People have been doing that more lately too. So thank you guys for that.
They're rating us?
Yeah, like on Spotify, we've been getting like, you know, more ratings, or like Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening. It doesn't matter. Just leave us a review.
If you give us 5 stars, I will hug you.
Yeah. Have a meet and greet. Just
have a meet and greet. Would you like a hug? I'm giving out hugs for 5 stars.
Yeah.
And that's how I sold my soul.
Yeah. And you guys
actually, we should do a meet and greet. I want to give out hugs.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
We're in Tucson, Arizona, if anybody's local.
Yeah.
Freed's address is...
No, stop. We're done.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Adios. Give out our address. It's your address too, mother...